Yeah.
One thing that's so interesting about your story is you and your husband had a really fulfilling dynamic ministry in Australia before you moved to Nashville. And so I'd love to hear the story of Belonging Co, but could we start take us a little bit more back, and we
Yeah.
got time, we're not in a rush, just your story in ministry and
Yeah.
then what brought you to America.
Yeah, well, I mean, my husband and I, we met in youth group. We were best friends for 3 years, and I had really just come into serving the Lord at, my early 20s. I was just 20 when I really decided to follow Jesus wholeheartedly. I'd always been a Christian since I was 11, but it was at 20 that I decided this is it. So I joined the youth group. I was like, well, I've got to serve. I've just got to serve. And so my husband and I were serving in our teenage youth group, and that's where we met. And something took place in 1997 where God just poured out his spirit upon our youth ministry. And there was about 1,000 kids at the time. And God just rocked it. And we grew this conference called Planet Shakers that went from, nothing to tens of thousands of people every year. We would travel Australia and do these massive conferences in every state. And from that, we pioneered a church in Melbourne, Australia, with our senior pastors that went from 0 to 10,000 in a really, really short time. And so my husband and I basically met, dated, got married, had children, all in the thrust of this flourishing ministry that grew overnight, really. And we thought we were going to be there forever because, Henry was the worship director. I was the pastoral oversight of the church, at the time with regions. We had to split the church in regions because it got so big. Henry was traveling the world, producing albums and leading worship. And we were like, this is amazing. But there became 2 or 3 years prior to us moving to America, there was an agitation in both Henry and I. And everything that felt right didn't feel right anymore. Everything that was so amazing wasn't amazing anymore. And we thought we were becoming negative. Like, what has happened? And the things started changing and shifting. And now in hindsight, I know that to be God ruffling the feathers to get out of the nest, to fly the coop and actually go to another place. But at the time, you can sometimes be very confused when you've grown up in a ministry and you've dedicated your life to it, and things start to shift. And sometimes you can take it for face value that it becomes a negative experience, like doors are closing and it seems like you're being sidelined over here. But actually, to understand now in maturity, that was what God's doing. Wow. But at the time, I had to really sift, what are you doing, God? So while it was flourishing and we were at the pinnacle of our ministry, if you like, God was like, it's time to go. And so there was this agitation and rustling, especially in my husband. And he kind of led the way and was like, Al, I think it's time to go. And I resisted it. I was like, no, we've pledged this ministry for life. We're going to be here forever. And I love Australia. He says, I really think it's America. And I'm like, well, you can go. I'm staying. I ain't going to America. I love Australia. I love our free healthcare. No, only joking. And I really didn't want to go to America until God began to work on my heart. And for a good year and a half, he began to stir my heart for the nation of the United States of America. And, supernaturally, we got green cards in a way that we shouldn't have. And so God was leading us. And so there we find ourselves in, if you like, a wilderness experience that I was like, God, why have you taken us from the pinnacle of something and you've literally brought us to like a deserted place? We don't know anybody. We're not part of a church. We don't have a job. But it was 2 years prior that he did say to me, will you go to nothing, with nothing, but carry the presence of God with you? And at the time I couldn't say yes because it scared me. But then God dealt with my heart and I said, yeah, we're ready. And that's when it all started to flow. And so that's how we found ourselves in Nashville. So it was a complete step of faith. It was a complete career suicide, if you like, in the natural. But we knew we were being led by the hand of God.